Well, one of the things he was planning to do was to break up the CIA altogether. He had been very critical of them because of the Bay of Pigs fiasco, and so he was going to have them totally dismembered, 100%, and that didn't go over too big with the top folks in the CIA.
Who would have no job.
That's right. So they were amongst the conspirators, along with people in the Department of Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Even the FBI was involved in that, and Secret Service. I mean, they made contact with the Mafia to get the actual shooters and the guns. This goes on and on. It's an incredible story.
Okay, and that was Ed Whitney from Bridgeport, Connecticut. Like he said, he's been a researcher for a number of years. He has a master's degree in economics. He's a very interesting guy. He's got a lot of knowledge, a lot of information there to share with us. We're going to be filming his presentation that he has mentioned in the organization that he is starting, the Cognoscenti. And so we'll be probably bringing segments of that into it.
Yep. Now, what's he going to be speaking on there?
What was that?
The Zionist.
Yep.
The Crusaders and the Islamists.
Kind of another trinity there,
Yep.
And it's funny because, I look forward to that because there is a lot of different information that we've been coming across lately that supports everything that, that he says. And we're gonna share that with you once we get a better grasp on it.
Zionism.
Yeah, that's a far involved subject that goes back, 1840s, 1800s, something like that, where that whole agenda that's kind of bringing us into what seems to be now the verge of World War III.
Yep.
So I want to thank Ed for letting us come into his home there. And I want to close, well, we still got a couple more minutes there, Willie. Is there anything else you want to bring up here before we kind of make our closing remarks? We've talked about, who are the controllers, the Bilderbergs,
right.
Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission. We haven't really gotten a lot into the Trilateral yet. Ed briefly brought that up.
Well, folks, if we continue to neglect to educate ourselves, we will not be a free society for very much longer. There's a story in the American Free Press, it's a little brief, where it says the feds must pay $2 million for a wrongful arrest. Now, a respected civil rights attorney, Jerry Spencer, recently won this $2 million settlement from FBI agents. And they wrongfully arrested an Oregon lawyer named Brandon Mayfield. Now, accusing him of involvement in March 11, 2004 train bombing in Madrid, Spain. And under the Patriot Act, the FBI obtained a secret search warrant, broke into the man's house, okay? And Mayfield was ultimately found innocent after Spanish authorities disputed the FBI's claims about his guilt. So under the Patriot Act, they have the power to install secret microphones, to bug his telephones, and to put microphones under his kitchen table and under his bed. And this is what, this is what goes on, folks. And they went into his papers, they copied his computers, and they took his DNA. And part of the settlement, the FBI was required to publicly apologize for dragging Mayfield through this ordeal. Folks, our country's in big trouble. Last year, it's been reported that we had more bankruptcies in this country than college graduates. That's the trend of this country. Recently, this week, I got something in the mail from State Senator, Don DeFranco. And this is what's going on. This is what's the high priority. For the Senate here, and it says that they're going to have school initiative to be the top priority, security assistance for education. Now, we're certainly not against security, folks, in our schools. Obviously, there's a lot of violence going on, and why all this violence is going on needs to be addressed as a whole different subject. But now that we have this violence and all these threats within the school where there's so much fear and the children can't learn, and not only that these schools are indoctrination camps for the NEA, which we've talked about before. So the kids are already, you might say, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but they're at a deficit. They're at a deficit in their ability to learn because of the small worldview that these humanists want to indoctrinate our kids with. But anyway, what we're having to deal with now is that they're proposing $1 million from the 2007 state budget just to pay for the costs of the school to assess their security of their schools. So that'll approximately be $7,000 to $10,000 per school. All right. $10 million in bonding would help the schools purchase and install security infrastructure such as surveillance cameras for the schools, entry door buzzer systems, scan cards, panic alarms, or other systems to improve security. And there's also a condition here where any new facility being built in the state, in order to get a reimbursement from the state, they have to put in all of these security measures. Now again, folks, we're not against the security measures, but they're indoctrinating the kids to grow up, all right? I forget what state it was last week, but I heard it on the Power Hour this past week. The kids came back to school after a weekend, and they were all mandatorily forced to take drug tests. Now, I'm not against drug testing for kids. You know, kids shouldn't be taking drugs or drinking alcohol. This is a given, folks. But they're indoctrinating the kids down the road when they get plugged into the New World Order, you know, in the work system. Folks, you're going to come to work and you're going to have to take a test to see if you took some drugs or to see if you're a liability for health insurance or whatever. I think you're getting the gist of what I'm saying. With this safe schools, you know, security assistance for education, you know, the kids aren't learning. And now we're going to have kids being fearful, not only of their peers, but being watched constantly. I just think we're going the wrong direction, folks, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, with all that security implementations in place, I'd be curious, like, if that was in place, say, during Columbine, would Columbine have really taken place? And I bet you it would have.
Right. Is it going to be the deterrent?
No, I think really more so what it's going to be is more indoctrination to living in a prison state, because I've done work in prisons.
Right.
Both of us have. We used to work together a number of years before I became a chef. I used to contract, and I did a lot of work. We both did a lot of work in the state prisons.
Yep.
And, you know, it seems now that they're becoming incorporated more like that. You go through a lot of locked doors, metal detectors. They search your tools, like when we went into the nuclear facility. I can't blame them for doing that.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, these are high security areas. They're doing this now in a school. It's supposed to be a place of learning.
Right. So we're spending all this tax dollars not only on securing safe places for education, but now they're going to spend also $4 million just to provide training on personnel how to use the security systems. And, you know, it's just a constant flow of money out of our pockets into the bureaucracy, and it's got to end somewhere, folks.
You know, and it's another example of coercion, because if you want to receive state aid, you have to follow those guidelines. And for the state to receive federal aid, they have to implement the guidelines. And it's always because we're under the screw from the Federal Reserve. We've talked about it a lot in the past, and we're going to continue to educate ourselves and those around us on what's going on, because more and more they're printing money out of thin air. The M3 report this past 2006, the Federal Reserve, which is unauditable because it's not part of our federal government, will no longer report how much cash is in circulation. Now, the Depression of the 30s, a big chunk of the Depression was caused because of the withdrawal of cash in circulation. There was work to do. There was just people had nothing to pay each other with.
Yep.
That's something we're just about out of time. I'd like to thank our crew and the staff of Nutmeg Television for making all of this possible. I'd like to thank you for letting us into your living rooms. Silly way out, Willie. I'd like to thank you, my brother,
Good
Ed
to be with
Whitney.
you.
I'm glad we got a chance to get you, share your point of view. Any last words?
Hey, check out your Constitution, folks, just for the fun of it.
Quick word by Benjamin Franklin. Without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech. Good night.